Our group did our project on Canada. The group consisted of Eric Smith, Brittany Hallman, Raven Wright, and Travis Carnell. Location and geography. Canada covers roughly 3,511,000 square miles. It covers most of the northern part of the North American continent and has a larger area than that of the United States. Canada consists of 10 provinces, which are Alberta, British Columbia, Manitoba, New Brunswick, Newfoundland, and Labrador, Nova Scotia, Ontario, Prince Edward Island, Quebec, and Saskatchewan. And it also consists of 3 territories, which are Northwest Territory, Nunavut, and Yukon. A little bit of the history of Canada. The first inhabitants of Canada were the Eskimos, and Canada was founded around 1604. The following pictures right here show Canada's population. Canada has a population of around 35,540,000 people, which is broken up over their 13 territories. Gross domestic product. The gross domestic product measures the national income and output for a given country's economy. The gross domestic product is equal to the total expenditures for the final goods and services produced within a country in a speculated period of time. The gross domestic product in Canada was worth 17,085 billion US dollars in 2014. The GDP value of Canada represents 2.88% of the world's economy. GDP in Canada averaged 581 billion from 1960 until 2014, reaching an all-time high of 1838 billion in 2013 and a record low of 40 billion in 1961. GDP in Canada is reported by the World Bank Group.
The political system of Canada is made up of the Parliament and the judiciary system. The judiciary system is made up of a Supreme Court, which is 9 judges that are appointed by the Governor General, and then below the Supreme Court there's the federal courts of Canada and the provincial courts. The Parliament is made up of the Sovereign, which is represented in Canada by the Governor General, as you can see. Below him is the Senate, which is appointed on the Prime Minister's recommendation, and below them is the House of Commons, which is elected by the voters. Canada is a free country. Studies gave them a 1.0 out of 7 on their freedom rating, which is the best score possible. This means that the population has civil liberties and political rights that a lot of other countries do not. However, with them being free, their government still has a slight level of corruption. According to another study, Canada received a score of 83 on their corruption score in 2015. The higher the score you have, the least corrupt the country actually is. So an 83 is actually a fairly good score. They ranked 9th out of all the countries in the world. They even beat the US, who ranked 16 out of the world and had a 76 corruption score. Now let's talk about the religious affiliations of Canada. Over the past few centuries, Canada has shown signs of being predominantly Protestant or Catholic-based faiths, such as Baptist, Roman Catholic, Orthodox, Methodist, and other Christian-based faiths. However, over the past few decades, there has been a rise in the numbers of other religious affiliations, such as Muslim, Hindu, Buddhism, Sikh, Jewish, and other religions such as that. An interesting fact that you might notice is that also over the past 40 to 45 years, the number of religiously unaffiliated people has spiked as well. As of 2011, there was a 24% of the population that was religiously unaffiliated. An interesting fact related to that is that I found a recent study that showed in 2015 the second highest religious affiliation in Canada was actually the number of people who had no religious affiliation. This chart shows the population breakdown of Canada during 2015. As you can tell by the chart, the gender split between male and female was fairly balanced. Most of the ages fall between 25 and 55, and according to the World Factbook, the average life expectancy of a Canadian citizen is 81.76 years, which is the 18th highest among the world, which might explain why they have a fairly high population past the age of 55. Inflation is defined as a general increase in prices and a fall in the purchasing value of money. This graph compares Canada and the US and their percent change in the Consumer Price Index over the past 10 years. As you can tell, both of their lines have been fairly similar over the past 10 years. They both dropped down during the recession around 2008 and 2009, but over the past few years they have steadily begun to increase.
Foreign direct investment. The stock of Canadian direct investment abroad grew by 8.8% in 2014, reflecting both outward investment flows as well as the upward revaluation effect of the weaker Canadian dollar against the US dollar. Meanwhile, the level of foreign direct investment in Canada rose by 5.8%, led by investment flow from the United States. As a result, Canada's net direct investment position increased for the first time in 3 years to reach $96.5 billion, making the largest net asset position on record. The manufacturing and mining sectors accounted for over half of the growth in the stock of the foreign direct investment in Canada in 2014. The foreign direct investment position in the Canadian manufacturing sector was up $11.2 billion to $215.7 billion. The mining and oil and gas extraction sector gained $10.9 billion to $152 billion. Since 1999, these two sectors combined have accounted for roughly half of all foreign direct investment in Canada. Trade imports and exports. Canada is the 12th largest export economy in the world and the 33rd most complex economy, according to the Economic Complexity Index. In 2013, Canada exported $438 billion and imported $437 billion, resulting in a positive trade balance of $1.69 billion. In 2013, Canada exported $438 billion, making it the 12th largest exporter in the world. During the last 5 years, the exports of Canada have increased at an annualized rate of 0.3%, from $431 billion in 2008 to $438 billion in 2013. The most recent exports are led by crude petroleum, which represents 18.3% of the total exports of Canada, followed by cars, which account for 10.5%. The top export destinations of Canada are the United States at $320 billion, China at $20.6 billion, Japan at $11 billion, the United Kingdom at $9.7 billion, and Mexico at $7.68 billion. In 2013, Canada imported $437 billion, making it the 12th largest importer in the world. During the last 5 years, the imports of Canada have increased at an annualized rate of 2.5%, from $385 billion in 2008 to $437 billion in 2013. The most recent imports are led by cars, which represent 5.98% of the total imports of Canada, followed by crude petroleum, which accounts for 5.57%. The top import origins of Canada are the United States at $230 billion, China at $48.9 billion, Mexico at $23.6 billion, Germany at $13.9 billion, and Japan at $12.8 billion. Human Development Index. The HDI shows that Canada is ranked in at number 9, right behind the United States. As you can see in the graph, trends have picked up since the 1990s and have steadily increased each year since 2010. The life expectancy in this country is 82, which is pretty normal in a first world country. Children and teens are expected to complete about 15.9 years of schooling. Like the United States, Canadian children start school at the age of 5 or 6 and continue going until they are between the ages of 16 and 18, depending on the province or territory. Both English language and French language schools are available across this bilingual country. Gross national income. A relatively high GNI indicates that this country is fully developed and the economy is successful. According to the World Bank, Canada's GNI was approximately 1.5 trillion purchasing power parity, or PPP, dollars in 2013. Economic freedom of rule. Canada has a reputation for clean government, a judicial system with an impeccable record of independence and transparency, and vigorous prosecution of corruption cases. Although 89% of Canada's land area is owned by the state, the 11% that is privately owned property is well protected. Enforcement of contracts is very secure, and expropriation is highly unusual. Protection of intellectual property rights meets world standards. Canada's highly competitive regulatory framework promotes business formation and operation. With no minimum capital standards, starting a company requires only one procedure. Flexible labor regulations enhance employment and productivity growth. Inflation has been modest, but the government controls virtually all prices for healthcare services through its mandatory single-payer nationalized program.
Canada is known worldwide as a multicultural country with vast range of cultural influences that create its distinct variety of customs and traditions. Canadian culture is also heavily influenced by its conquerors, the French and the British. Proud for their unique identity, Canadians take pride in being citizens of the world's second largest country in terms of total area. With a large number of immigrants, Canada has been a welcoming home to their diverse and multicultural nation, making it a favorite place to migrate to by individuals from different countries all over the world. Canadians are predominantly tolerant, polite, and extremely conservative. They're very community-oriented and instill the sense of giving back to the community. Their constitution is also progressive, making same-sex marriage legal, eliminating capital punishment, their publicly funded health care, strict gun controls, and their strong efforts to banish poverty. Canada has every kind of festival for everyone. A few of the top festivals are Winterlude in Ottawa. This winter festival boasts of the largest skating rink in the world and accommodates over 1.6 million visitors a year with its vast range of entertainment and educational offerings for the entire family. Celebration of Light in Vancouver is a musical fireworks competition with some of the world's best international competitors, with an annual visitor number of over 1 million. Canadians also celebrate Canada Day. On July 1, 1867, the nation was officially born when the Constitution Act joined 3 provinces into one country. Here you can see the foreign exchange rate in Canada, Mexico, China, Japan, and Eurozone per US dollar. The concept of justice is fundamental to Canadian society. There are different levels and types of courts in Canada. There are provincial and territorial courts, superior courts, courts of appeal, federal courts, and administrative tribunals. Canada has the second best water quality ranking among selected industrialized countries based on the Environmental Performance Index. Canada ranked 9th overall among the 157 countries assessed. The Environmental Performance Index on a global scale shows Canada in the 62.9 to 68.9 range, along with the United States, Mexico, Brazil, and Australia. Here we can look at the SWOT analysis of Canada. Some strengths they have are the knowledge of the North American market, young dynamic companies in the sector, vast experience with translation due to bilingualism, large domestic oil supply, strong demand for services, their new applications emerging, the North American Free Trade Agreement and being a neighbor of the United States, and their quick bounce back from the 2008 recession, showing stability and security of Canadian financial institutions. Some weaknesses of Canada include their industry fragmentation, especially in services, undercapitalization, lagging automation in service companies, lack of critical mass in the Canadian market, lack of competition in Canada. You have to look at the global view, transportation infrastructure, and heavy trade dependence on the U.S. Some opportunities include Canada has a lot of potential to export services since exports in the service sector shrank by 1% in 2012. Exploring exporting to emerging markets. Rise of the Internet, which opens substantial opportunities for the language industries to create global service companies as an infrastructure for multilingual corporate information environments. Some threats to Canada include the appreciation of the Canadian dollar, the EU debt crisis, where Canada signing a free trade agreement with Europe will not do any good if Europe cannot afford to buy Canadian products. Government's refusal to act on climate change has affected international trade relations, and understanding how their technology integrates into specific markets.